It's amore. Number two, if you have patterns when they film, sometimes it can create English is my first language. Hey, it's number one best-selling author and motivational speaker Erik Qualman, but most of you know me as Equalman. Thank you so much for joining us for today's 7 Super Tips, where we're gonna have Reid Hoffman. If you don't know Reid, he's a serial entrepreneur, best known for being part of the PayPal Mafia, as well as co-founder of LinkedIn. And just going way back with Reid, I was one of the first million members of LinkedIn, if you can believe that. So anyways, without further ado, here are 7 super tips from Reid Hoffman.
So the first rule that I discussed was to look for disruptive change. And the reason that I said look for disruptive change is because it's what are the opportunities that come about that are really new opportunities, that are something, and because the opportunity, generally speaking, has to be large. It can't be something that's like, well, boy, you know, it's been sitting there for 10 or 20 years and no one's ever really thought about it. That's very rarely the right answer. And if it's not large enough to be something that you could make something significant out of, it's not really high impact. And the kind of pioneer parallel to this is that if you're going to actually kind of pack up your wagons and go somewhere, make sure that where you're going is potentially really good, right? And that the algorithm by which you can think about that is all of a sudden there's a new opportunity. It's a change in technology, it's a change in competitive landscape, it's a change in kind of how the global ecosystem comes together.
And too often entrepreneurs say never give up, which is foolish. So one thing in the Startup Review, there's a chapter called ABZ planning, which is a function of how you plan, which you have a plan A. Typically people think plan B is essentially like I have a whole nother coherent plan. Actually what it is a set of plans B. It's like, well, if this hypothesis doesn't work, I can try this. If this hypothesis doesn't work. So when you have a plan A, you should be thinking about if my hypotheses aren't working, then what are the things that I try to try to still roughly make it work? My goal may shift a little bit, my strategy may shift substantially or some, and then plan Z is it's really not working, my lifeboat, how do I get to the next thing? And you should have that in mind too, if at all possible. So for example, when I started my first company, SocialNet, my plan Z was I could go move in with my dad, pay off my debt, right, and then get back to it. And and then by the way, understanding and knowing your plan B allows you to take much more substantive risk because you can go to the edge of it because that allows you to then take risk intelligently and differentially from other folks. Now, ultimately, the kind of decision about when to pivot, whether or not to one or more of your plans B or to plan Z, comes down to the thing I was saying about formulating your investment thesis with some clarity. What is the thing I'm betting on? What is my ability to succeed, the way the world's going to be, such that this plan will succeed? And you don't actually necessarily need to completely test it empirically. Part of going and talking to your friends, other smart people, and asking them, what could go wrong here, is you're actually doing essentially a conceptual test. You're saying of smart other people, will this work or not? And if you find that your confidence in your investment thesis is going down and you're unable to correct it, that's when you begin to say, should I pivot? Should I pivot to a plan B? Should I pivot to a plan Z? Should I pivot to a new plan A? And that's the way that you essentially make that decision. And it's, generally speaking, you should have a little bit of persistence. But one of the other things that is the trick in entrepreneurship is what I call persistent flexibility, because people in giving you advice will say, have a vision, stick with it, succeed at it despite all the criticism, and then flexibility, listen to your customers, listen to the market, etc. The way you put those together is through this investment thesis, where you're saying, do I have still confidence in why I think this is a good idea? And that shift of confidence is the way to understand when to pivot.
One of the paradoxes of entrepreneurship is you do these kind of two things that are in contradiction in balance. So one of them is you actually want to have some self-delusion of like, yes, I'm sure I can make it work. On the other hand, you want to be asking yourself every day and every week, is my confidence in this going up or down? And if it's not going up, what do I need to do and learn and pivot in order to have it? And it doesn't have to be that it goes up every week. I mean, PayPal, LinkedIn, we've had weeks. Every valuable startup has weeks and months of valley of the shadow, which is, why did I ever think this was a good idea? And so that happens. So the confidence can go down. That's fine. But part of the reason you're asking the question is in order to know what problem do I need to tackle aggressively to think that I'm on the right path. The majority of startups are establishing a new market, a disruption, a new plan, et cetera, that may be opened up by change of platform, like moving from desktop to mobile, or the availability of artificial intelligence and machine learning over data, or any number of different things. And so the most common one is a fast cycle of a learning clock of here's what we're learning, here's what we understood, here's what we thought before, here's what worked, here's what didn't work, here's what we're doing. And that cycle gone all the way up to the board. So a classic mistake that's made, the inverse of that, is everything's fine. And you're like, no. Startups are you throw yourself off a cliff and you assemble an airplane on the way down. You're by default, when you start, you're dead. Not everything's fine. It's here's what we're learning, here's what we're doing, here's what we're learning, here's what we're doing. And the speed of that cycle is super important.
It's the same amount of blood, sweat, and tears when you start a company, whether or not it's kind of a fixed vertical market, or whether or not it's something really, really large. And the difference is that you might as well shoot for something large, because you can still end up with something smaller, but aiming for something large is really important. And part of the reason why this is kind of a rule of entrepreneurship, and maybe this is the kind of thing that to this room is like, yeah, we already know this, we're living it, I hope, is because if you don't start out aiming for the big game, you almost never can get there. It's got to be the how do I have global impact. Like I think all high impact companies are basically have to think globally in nature these days because of the way that the market ecosystem is going. And so you go, okay, how do I play onto that stage? And part of that in terms of a pioneer parallel is, again, how do I go somewhere that is substantial and unique?
Hire people you'd work for, right? And it's a good question to ask yourself, because the question is how do you make sure that you have the absolute, best team to go into the fight with? And it's not like, for example, you should sometimes also hire people that you wouldn't necessarily work for, and there's a specific reason. But you should be thinking, is this person, for example, someone I would learn from? Someone that, as we're going into battle, we'll be learning from each other. And those kinds of things that are encapsulated in that metric of what I hire somebody I would work for is a good way of trying to be very disciplined about keeping the bar high in who you're joining, because you're going into this really important thing that's very difficult. OODA loop, it's fighter pods, you're going to be zigging and zagging around a lot, and you need to have the team with you. And these are people you're going to be spending hours and hours and hours with. You'd want to be going into battle with them.
This is actually a tricky one to explain, is the plan for both good and bad luck. And part of what it is people say, what do you mean plan for good luck? I have this idea, it works out, and then and then things keep going. Well, good luck actually comes in opportunities that you don't normally see. So, for example, PayPal started as a encryption on mobile phones company. Because it was two close friends of mine, I joined their board when they founded it. Even though I thought encryption technology in mobile phones back in December '98 was not a good idea, which I told them. But it was kind of like, you also back people. And then they were like, well, okay, not encryption on mobile phones, maybe cash on mobile phones, or maybe not just cash on mobile phones, maybe cash on Palm Pilots, maybe cash on Palm Pilots, and payment service through the web, and then they launched with that. And for the first week, they said, well, all this growth is coming through eBay, but that's not really what we planned. We planned on people like bringing their Palm Pilot around with them, exchanging money. You know, these aren't our customers. We should figure out how to get them off. And then, of course, part of PayPal's great strength was being able to pivot fast, and they went, oh no, these are our customers, right? All the rest of that stuff doesn't work. This is the thing that we need to go to. And that's an instance of what I think of as planning for good luck, which is you go, okay, sometimes what happens when you start the journey of going down a company is you're looking for an opportunity that you may not have thought of it when you started it, but then suddenly you kind of, like the pioneering parallel, you come around the corner and all of a sudden there's new opportunities available to you, and that you head very strongly to that. And so good luck is not just, oh, look, my plan worked. It's you will encounter opportunities that you will need to move quickly and grow into an exploit by having been on the journey. Now, planning for bad luck is unfortunately a little bit more straightforward, which is sometimes you find yourself, pioneering, going that you can't find a way through the mountains. What's your plan B, right? And one of the ways that I frequently think about this is I kind of have a plan A, a plan B, and a plan Z. The plan A is, okay, this is what we're thinking of doing. Plan B is, well, if that's not working, what are my parameters of flexibility? I'm still trying to get to the same, build the same product market fit. I'm still trying to get there, but maybe if I try this rather than that.
That's it for today's 7 super tips from LinkedIn founder Reid Hoffman. Thank you for joining us for today's show. Now remember, if you don't want to miss the next show, hit that subscribe button below, or maybe audio is your thing. We have the Super You podcast on Spotify and iTunes, so go download that today. It's all designed to unlock and unleash your inner superpowers. So until next time, this is Equalman reminding all of you, it's not what we take from the world, it's what we leave behind. Black goes with every potential black drop. Number 3, you have no idea what the backdrop's gonna be behind you, and black goes with every possible black drop. Backdrop, I'm wearing black, but it's backdrop, black drop.